Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Robo Celestial here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 10 of What If Deku Had the Sharingan. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. So, we begin. It's fine, you're Raka, it's nothing. There were many things Izuku was good at. Hiding his emotions, however, was not one of them. Achako could tell he was lying. His smile strained and wobbled as his hoarse voice cracked. The longer she saw her friend in this poignant state, the more she realized how little she'd actually looked at him today. Izuku's ghostly complexion was apparent and contrasted considerably against the near black bags under his eyes. Was he getting sleep? She pondered the question but a moment before a more pressing one drowned her in guilt. How had she not noticed earlier? Achako bent down to Izuku's eye level. He hadn't moved from his position on the floor, backed into a dingy corner of the hall, curled into himself. It was like watching a child try to hide from the monster under their bed. The pit that had formed in her stomach when initially seeing her friend deepened and darkened as she continued to notice more and more worrying details. The one that ensnared and broke Achako, though, was the look in his eyes. The slightly nervous, confident, almost naive kindness she hadn't yet found out she was infatuated with was nowhere to be seen. That brilliant brightness was replaced with a vacancy, his mind wandering elsewhere. It was uncanny. The pit in her stomach swallowed her whole and threatened to close. Deku, Achako's usually cheery demeanor was absent in her voice. What's wrong? After a few agonizing, long seconds, life started to ever so slowly and carefully fill Izuku's eyes. He blinked a few times before silently looking away from the girl in front of him. Achako had every intention of helping him in any way she could. He didn't want to talk tough. Everything inside him said not to trust her. Pretending he was fine all day was straining, and she didn't look like she would let him go without talking. After a few more seconds of silence, he started to speak. His voice barely above a whisper as he did so. Sluggishly and shakily, Izuku explained his experience with the Nomu, what happened afterwards, omitting any mention of One for All, and how he was learning to cope with the aftermath of the situation. Izuku avoided going into as much detail as possible. As his speech went on, his voice gradually became steady and, by the end, sped up to his usual pace. Life started to fill his eyes again once he was done, and he became physically more relaxed. Him talking about it wasn't what was helping, though. Achako moving closer and rested her hand to his arm, comforting and grounding him, in reality, was what seemed to help. The two sat in silence for a while, enjoying the comfort of being around one another. After a few moments, Achako started to feel hungry. She got up, walked in front of Izuku, and plastered a smile on her face. You're really strong. As she spoke, she flexed her biceps to emphasize her point. And you got Bakugo, Iida, and me here for you. She extended one of her hands out for Izuku to take, and, after a moment of hesitating, they went to the cafeteria. After they got there, the pair acted like normal. Katsuki spared them a glance with an inkling of an idea as to what kept the two teens. Izuku was going through a lot, and he'd give him as much room as needed for him to process everything. Midnight announced a final event as a bracket tournament and expounded upon the rules. Once the explanations were done, Mashirao and Niranjeki dropped out of the event. Their places were given to Tetsutetsu and Ibara from Class B. With the last-minute changes accounted for, Midnight assigned the matches. The students of UA continued on with frivolous activities and competitions before the first match started. During their allotted free time, Mashirao warned Izuku of his opponent's quirk. Hitachi Shinso's brainwashing, respond to anything he says, and it's game over. Present Mick announced the fighters for the first match with lavishly obtuse introductions as the two boys walked their way onto the stage. The moment the fight started, Hitachi tried to antagonize Izuku. The violet-haired boy tried everything from insulting Mashirao to personal attacks, and finally, please. None of it worked, much to the surprise of everyone, including Izuku. He certainly felt provoked by the other boys taunting, but the feeling was so detached compared to what he expected. Almost everything had felt that way since the USJ attack. Without uttering a sound, Izuku punched Hitachi in the gut and flipped him out of the ring without using One for All. The match was short and subdued the previously roaring sounds of the audience. It left an unsatisfied bitter taste inside everyone's mouths. The second and third fights ended in much the same manner. Shoto hadn't given Hanto a chance to do much before he froze the boy and nearly half the stadium by generating a glacier. Denki shorted himself out with his first move, promptly giving Ibara the win. The fourth fight was another odd one. Tenya was dragged by the nose and used for an advertising campaign by May. Yuga and Mina had much more of an exchange, but kept to the general theme of ending shortly when Mina won with an uppercut to Yuga's face. Momo and Minoru's fight followed the flow of Mina and Yuga's. It was a real exchange that ended promptly with Momo's quick thinking giving way to her cornstarch-filled victory. Minoru gave up almost as soon as she had created it. Fight number 6 was a proper, drawn-out, man-to-man brawl between Ijiro and Testu. The two boys went hit for hit until they knocked each other out. Achako sat alone in the prep room for the latter half of the fights leading to hers. When Ida found her there, an almost comedic amount of determination, nerves, and concentration was splayed on her face. They started chatting about her upcoming match before they were interrupted. "Uraraka." Izuku barged into the room accompanied by that clank of a metal door slamming into its adjoined wall. He quickly joined the conversation and dismissed Iida's assertion that Katsuki would hold back against a girl, seemingly to Achako's dismay. "Everyone's competing here with the dream of becoming number 1. No one's holding back." Kaken least of all, he clarified his dismissal of Iida's claim. "But you've helped me so much already, Uraraka, so I thought I might return the favor." Izuku offered her a strategy to win against Katsuki, but she gently declined it before declaring that she would stop relying on him and telling him they'd see each other in the finals. She left the two boys with an unsteady smile and trembling thumbs up. The heavy-hitting brawl between Ijiro and Tetsu ended in a tie. They announced that a winner would be determined by an arm wrestling match between the two before moving on to the next battle. Anxiety rose amongst many of those in Class 1A as anticipation for the next battle seemed to drag on. No one thought of Achako as weak, but everyone knew from their first fight earlier in the year how strong Katsuki was in comparison. If she couldn't end the battle promptly, it would be game over. For the last battle of the first round, President Mick started his introduction for them as the two heroes in training walked out and into the arena. The hot-headed boy Woe's bark is as loud as his bite, Katsuki Bakugo of the hero course. Versus. My personal pick. Achako Uraraka, also of the hero course. The determination emanating from both fighters was staggering. "Don't expect me to go easy on you, just cuss your Deku's girlfriend round cheeks. I already know all about your quirk, so if you're gonna give up, don't waste my time and do it now." Despite the harshness of his words, Katsuki's voice was calm and steady. There was something off about the face he was pulling. It didn't fully match the unbothered facade of his voice. She couldn't pin down exactly what was wrong, but Achako knew better than to take Katsuki's words at face value. She also knew not to underestimate her explosive opponent. Achako learned firsthand how strong he was during their prior bout. She also knew that he was even stronger than he was back then. The moment President Mick announced the start of their match, Achako rushed in, screaming. She wasn't about to give up without a fight, and Katsuki suspected as much. As soon as she got close, she was met with an explosion to the face. Expecting such a ferocious counter, Achako sidestepped as much of the blast as she could and circled around him. Keeping low, she tried to get Katsuki with the pads of her fingers again, only to be met with another blast to the face and forced to circle around behind him. Their fight continued with that rhythm: rush in, blast, circle behind, rush in, blast, circle back. All the while, Achako kept herself close to the ground. Someone started a commotion about Katsuki's behavior part way through their battle, but neither one paid it any mind. Gradually, an irate expression befell onto Katsuki's face as their dance went on. He was starting to get tired, and Achako had been accumulating what had now become a significant amount of damage. Their battlefield had transformed into a crater. Katsuki stood upon its central precipice. Heaving from running around so much, a determined expression graced Achako's sweaty, dirty, and soot-covered face. "Thanks, Bakugo," she caught her breath, "thanks for not dropping your guard." Achako tapped her fingers together. Katsuki let loose a confused grunt before looking up to find the arena that he blasted away, plummeting back towards him. A feral look of excitement found its way onto his face. The moment he looked elsewhere, Achako bolted towards him. She knew Katsuki would take the bait, blow away the rubble, and that would leave an opening for her. Katsuki braced his wrist for the blowback of his next attack. Whether he liked it or not, he was going to end up needing some minor treatment from Recovery Girl after this fight. He waited half a moment for the rubble to be enraged. The preceding eruption that spawned from his hand encased the hailing chunks of wreckage. Practically nothing was left from the concrete onslaught. Spectators watched in awe at the fighters' displays as their bodies shook from the resounding boom reaching the stands. The explosion's force proved too much for Katsuki as an unpleasant crack emanated from his wrist and he fell flat on his butt. It was at this moment he noticed his opponent closing in. Ochako sprinted towards Katsuki. She didn't allow herself to falter with the shaking of the stadium. She pushed on as her opponent stumbled and fell from the force of his own attack. "I'll win. I can win." She thought, "I'll win, just like Deku did." The two of them were only a few steps away when he finally noticed her. That's when she saw it. There was a look in Katsuki's eyes that she'd never seen there before. Panic. And just as soon as it revealed itself, it was gone. The mask of perpetual aggravation was back on his face. Then the fight ended. With one swipe of the arm, it was all over. Ochako stirred awake and found herself in an unfamiliar bed. The last few moments of her battle rammed their way into the forefront of her mind. Katsuki's eyes shifted back to their usual aggravated gleam, and it was over all too soon. Faster than she could react, his arm arched towards her. An explosion dragged along with the movement. She took the blast, full force. It hurt, it burned, and she knew the match was over. The exhaustion was too much, and everything ached. Her limp body tumbled and skidded across the marred ground. Every smack, skid, and scratch hurt more than the last. She remembered was the stadium floor's coarse surface grinding against her freshly burned face like sandpaper before she blacked out. It didn't take a genius to figure out she lost. "I'm sorry, Dad, Mom." Tears welled up in Ochako's eyes as her face scrunched into a frown. She gripped the covers lay over her, as if grasping at them desperately enough would stop her from crying. "Damn it, Uraraka," a familiar rough voice said from beside her. "Start crying, and they're gonna make me out to be the bad guy again." Ochako hastily sat up and turned to Katsuki, her sniveling state quickly vanishing. "Bakugo? What are you doing here? Wait, where's Deku? Did you just use my name?" Ochako's cheery disposition seemed to flash back in an instant. Katsuki's eyebrow twitched at her last question, and he gave an annoyed TSK. His next match is about to start. Damn nerd wouldn't leave, so the old hag had to drag him out and left me stuck babysitting you. I dunno how much he told you or what happened after the cavalry battle. But I can guess. Hurry up and heal already so you can watch Deku's match. Katsuki promptly got up after his lecture and left without giving her any room to question what he said. Izuku's match was starting soon, and he wasn't about to miss the chance to see his friend mop the floor with Shoto. After Katsuki left, Ochako checked her phone. She had some missed calls and frantic supportive messages from her parents. A small smile crept its way onto her face, and she called them. She'd still have time before Izuku's next match anyways. When Katsuki got back to Class 1A's spot in the stands, he was met with satirical comments and criticism. "Oh, rough match, huh, villain face?" Hanta was the first to speak up. "Awkward matchups aside, you did great at playing the bad guy, Bakugo." Sayu interjected. "Shut the hell up, all of you." Katsuki didn't want to be bothered and plopped in his seat with a huff, ignoring any further comments. Not long after, Ochako joined her classmates as the match was about to start. Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we have a third channel called We The Celestial Naruto, What If? We The Celestial Naruto What If mainly focuses on our Naruto What If series. If you are interested in content like this, please go check the description below or click the eye icon in the top right corner. Now with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. Present Mick announced a start of their bout, and the two boys were at each other's throats immediately. Izuku was met face first with an immense amount of ice wildly perusing him. Lightning arced off of Izuku's body. Remembering the feeling of Katsuki's, Kamui Woods, and Eraserhead's movements, Izuku swiftly took to the air before landing on Shoto's ice with an axe kick. The glacial protrusions shattered into large chunks under his foot. As soon as Izuku landed, another sweeping attack of ice flanked him from his left. He rolled in towards Shoto to avoid the hit. Taking a vaguely similar form to Iida, Izuku went into a full-on sprint towards his opponent. Shoto sent another glacier to meet him head-on. Shifting into another running stance, Izuku leaped onto the oncoming attack. Vaulting himself forward, his movements were identical to Katsuki's. Shoto shot frozen attack after frozen attack at Izuku to no avail. Every protrusion he created was either smashed or avoided. Nothing was stopping Izuku, and Shoto could feel himself starting to freeze over from repeated of his quirk. Not long after, their faces were inches apart. Shoto braced himself with a throne of frost before Izuku sent an uppercut into his stomach. Izuku's hit sent him to the edge of the arena, forcing Shoto to put the brakes on with more ice. You're shivering, Todoroki. Quirks are still just physical abilities. You must have a limit to how much of that cold you can bear. Izuku started, but then, you could always use your left side to thaw yourself out, right? Shoto's expression scrunched into an angry scowl. Everyone's giving it their all. To win, to achieve their goals, to make it to the top. And you're gonna win half-assing it? Izuku continued his lecture. I only got one hit in, and you're already struggling to keep fighting. Gimme everything you got. Come at me. Slowly, Shoto lifted himself from his ice wall and exhaled a long, drawn-out, calming, icy breath. I could say the same thing about you, Midoriya. Shoto's declaration made Izuku's blood run cold. You haven't been using your eyes, this fight could be over with one's glace. So, why haven't you? I can't. Izuku's answer only further provoked Shoto. He sent another wave of ice at Izuku, this time catching him off guard. Izuku was smacked in the gut before getting encased by a newly formed frozen prison. One for All sparked to life again, and he cracked out of his ensnarement. The two boys went back to the game of tag they were playing before, but Shoto was too slow this time. Izuku closed in and delivered a right hook to Shoto's face. In retaliation, Shoto tried to freeze him again, but was met with a knee to the gut. I can't tell you why, but right now this is all I can do. I'm giving it everything I've got. Izuku's roaring declaration proved only to push Shoto's agitation. I don't need to use that damn bastard's quirk, Shoto's voice was low. I'll never give him the pleasure and let him have his way. I'll show my father, you earned him. Izuku interrupted. Your power is your own. Your experiences, your determination, I don't know what they are. But your fire isn't anyone else's. It's yours. Be your own kind of hero. Flashbacks of his childhood played through Shoto's head. His training, his mother, the day he got his scar, an interview of All Might on TV, and his mother's encouraging words that she once told him. You decide who you want to become. Like the flip of a switch, Shoto's left side gave way to a brilliant blaze. I wanna be my own kind of hero. A newfound determination seemed to embed itself into his words. Thank you all for watching the video to the end.